Primetime local news, serving the Lakeland and Midwest regions.
Good evening, I'm Jace Mackey. From construction on the new fire hall being completed to discussions around the Lloydminster Place Arena project, there was lots going on at Lloydminster City Hall this year. We spoke with Mayor Gerald Albers to go over it all.
Lloydminster Mayor Gerald Albers joins me today for a year-end interview to discuss the year that was and look forward to 2023. Mayor Albers, thank you so much for being here today. First of all, I'll get you to go through some of your highlights from this past year.
Well, we had a lot of highlights in the city. I think just having people being able to gather in so many atmospheres and venues this year was terrific to see. Great to see the fair come back, where we saw families and friends gather with chuck wagons in coordination. Then we had the oil show, we had parade, we had pancake breakfast in front of City Hall. Just a lot of great venues. We had some great fundraising events going into October. And, you know, we've had Here Comes Santa Claus Day and saw a community out, even though it was cool. So a lot of things are still the same. We still get warm weather and we get cold weather.
You mentioned the oil show, and something that was that happened to the side of the oil show, and both the premiers at the time were in Lloydminster as well, and they agreed to modernize the Lloydminster charter. Can you talk a little bit about what went into that?
So the two premiers were aware that the city had requested the charter be updated. It's still being completed now with hopes that it makes it through the process at the provincial level by December 31st. If it doesn't, it'll hopefully be early in January, but we're really hoping to see it closed up and updated by the end of December, which in itself was a real step in the right direction. I believe the last time the charter went through a revision, it took 10 years to do the revision processes and that. One of the big steps in the charter revision that we're asking, and there appears to be granted, is it will be reviewed on a 5-year basis, just to ensure that the city is, our legislation is compatible and stays up with both the Saskatchewan Cities Act as well as the Municipal Government Act of Alberta, and just ensure that if things change in government, we don't miss any opportunities. I think that's my biggest concern, is making sure that we are not missing anything from the provincial government, especially in grants and processes like that.
Now, another topic I wanted to talk about was interprovincial trade, especially here within the city. I know the city had some good news, I think it was last month or pretty recently, when it comes to liquor and the ability to kind of do that across the border without having to send it to Edmonton, send it to Regina. Can you talk about that, and then maybe some of the other issues that need to be addressed? Because I know a lot of different businesses here in Lloydminster, they face challenges just because of the way where the city is located.
Absolutely. Our bi-provincial nature really challenges provincial legislation that was meant to be very protective in many cases. And provinces are working hard to take that down. So what we were able to accomplish to this point is that beer that has been brewed at a microbrewery or a distillery on the Alberta side of the city does not have to make the 1,000-kilometer trip to Regina and back to be sold locally. That beer can now be obtained through the Saskatchewan liquor store, the private vendor in Saskatchewan that's been established by the province to make that happen. So it's a special order and there's some processes to go through it, but it doesn't have to drive to Regina and come back. It can literally cross the city. That allows events at the Lloyd X, at the Lloyd Golf and Curling Center, at the Civic Center, to be able to have locally brewed or distilled products available. We're still working through the Alberta side going the other way, but we believe we're close there, working with the province, both at the ministerial level for red tape reduction as well as Alberta Liquor and Gaming, their organization. So that's one hurdle partly taken care of. The next big hurdle that's really on a lot of businesses' minds is the Canadian Food and Inspection Agency, the Safe Food Regulations, the Canadian Safe Food Regulations. I was recently in Ottawa and spoke to the minister's staff in Ottawa, as well as both of our MPs, to discuss this very important issue. And we're going to continue to meet with people. I spoke to the Provincial Minister of Agriculture in Alberta just yesterday, Minister Horner, and spoke to Minister Merritt's office to ensure that, again, everybody's on going in the same direction. So they're proposing, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency is proposing that we will be a pilot project that will hopefully lead to taking down some real interprovincial trade barriers around food and those products that are covered under the CFIA today, which is quite large. We had 34 businesses identified, working with the Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development here at the city and through my office to ensure that we don't miss anybody. So we're making steps. This is an ongoing discussion, be it healthcare, be it business to business, all sorts of things. And we'll continue to try and help take down those barriers that exist at a provincial and federal level. And that's one of the challenges of city council and administration, is to help to elevate those issues at a provincial level.
Now, when we talk about different major projects this year, we saw the fire station come into service this year. A couple other projects are still ongoing. Kind of get your thoughts on the projects we saw this year and maybe some that are on the horizon.
Absolutely. So we saw Fire Hall number 1, a new Fire Hall number 1 constructed and commissioned and opened, and which was terrific to see. We had a place where the firefighters can actually reside, but they can train in the facility. And there was lots of enhancements in that building that we were able to do through our teams at the city, not just the fire department, but through public works and engineering. We can do some rescue work inside the building and train continuously year round. Those are terrific things to be able to do in the new facility and plan for the future. We saw the move of the library completed to the Lloyd Mall. Just a tremendous step in the right direction to get out of the basement location, which was a concern, even though we had some challenges getting it into the mall and getting it opened. But we know usership is up, readership is up, people coming through. That's terrific. That's a facility that's for everyone, from young at heart right through to the oldest that are still looking to keep their reading skills up and gain information and knowledge. Lastly, the museum, with the museum being opened at the new location, and just recently seeing the demolition of the old buildings from that perspective. So those were all great steps in 2022. Work continued at the wastewater treatment plant. This is now 5th year, as I like to say, 3 years of fundraising, 3 years of construction. We're now going into the 3rd year of construction and commissioning in 2023. All things are looking good. They faced incredible challenges as a team, and the team has risen up to those challenges, from supply chain issues to cost management. So those are all great items for that facility. Work continues to progress from the perspective of planning and architecture and engineering on a new Lloydminster Place. And I know a lot of people still have questions. We still have some questions as City Council, but we need to keep moving forward if we're going to reach that 2025 opening date as planned, subject to a final decision of Council to move forward with the project. Work continues on the fundraising as well as securing government grants if they're available. And we'll continue to be working with that even next week again in Edmonton with the Government of Alberta. So a lot of pieces on the go. There'll also be more additional work done in the downtown in 2023, which is long awaited for the residents and businesses downtown, but also I'm sure a little concerned as well, because it always seems if we're going to do something, we have to start under the ground first, and that will involve of course, closure of streets and work to be done. But I think as we start that process, just seeing that move forward, that will reassure people in the downtown that we have taken that plan seriously and we are going to see it move forward.
All right, Mayor Albers. Well, thank you so much for taking some time to talk with us today. It looks like there's a lot to look forward to in the new year. Thanks for taking some time, and have a happy holiday.
A very happy holiday and Merry Christmas to you and yours and all the great folks throughout our region.
Furniture set and design supplied by Furniture Gallery and Furniture House, downtown Lloydminster.
Mother Teresa School is spreading holiday spirit by bringing their community together through a night filled with fun activities. Here's Shelby Clark with more in this week's Beyond the Classroom.
Students here have been focusing on the importance of supporting others around them through different projects.
Social justice pieces around the community, so some of them have been collecting food for food bank, SPCA, things for pets, different things like that, just to help out the community. And how can we be more like saints?
The night was filled with showcasing everything the children learned over the past few months. Families were able to join in on all the fun activities Mother Teresa held to celebrate the holiday season.
Christmas carols, we have a sleigh ride outside, Candy Cane Lane is lit up all outside for photos, for families to join together there. We have a recorded Christmas concert that's on a loop in the gymnasium. We didn't want to miss out on that traditional aspect. And there's a Christmas craft going on. We have a prayer center as well. And of course, Santa's here.
This is the first year Mother Teresa has had a big celebration instead of a Christmas concert. With the school mostly having pre-kindergarten to grade 2 students, the young kids enjoyed this celebration compared to standing up on stage and performing.
Well, I think it's really unique and special to Mother Teresa Early Childhood Education Center because we are all about little children and being able to showcase their learning and the inquiry and the excitement that they had around getting to understand what Christmas is, who the saints are of Christmas, because tonight is all about Christmas with the saints, and it's rooted in our faith. And by coming tonight, the children really get to share that learning experience with their families.
And that's it in this week's Beyond the Classroom.
At Lakeland College, our students go beyond the classroom for immersive, hands-on learning experiences. It's about experiencing the real world, because the real world doesn't wait, and neither do we.
It was a busy year for Battleford's Lloydminster MP Rosemary Falk. As Stacey Comer found out, local constituents have brought many issues forward for our MP to take to Ottawa.
It is the time of year again where we get to sit down with some of our favorite people and find out exactly about what's going on in their lives and how things have went. And joining me is Area MP Rosemary Falk. Thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Yes, anytime.
Well, let's talk about this year. It's been a complex year. I mean, maybe not as complex as the past couple, but let's talk about some of the personal highlights for you for this past year.
For sure. It's funny you say this year because I think of just this past fall session, but really we go back to January, and it's been a busy year. I mean, even coming out of the pandemic, even when we think of restrictions, like those were just lifted not too long ago, right? So I think some of the highlights, definitely getting back to normal. Being able to see people, being able to travel, have the parliamentary session, this fall session especially, being able to be in person. We still have that hybrid thing going on, but it's nice to be in person. Another highlight is we got a new leader.
Right.
Which it's hard to believe all in this year. But I mean, the optimism, the caucus unity, the hope that there is for the future, I mean, it's a great way to end off the year.
And I know it's tough to encompass everything that's happened. And your constituents obviously will come to you, and no matter what, good, bad, otherwise, I'm sure you hear so much. But what are some of the things that they have been talking to you about throughout the year, and even just recently, some of their concerns, or even some of the things that they think is really going well?
Yeah, for sure. I think even when we look at the beginning of the year, we had protests, right? There was the trucker convoy in Ottawa. So I've heard a lot about that. Also to this, coming into, I guess, this fall, the Liberals had brought in their firearm confiscation ban.
Right.
And that's even developed in the past couple weeks, so I've heard a lot about that. And also too, just the cost of living. 1 in 5 Canadians are skipping meals just because they can't afford it. Mm-hmm. And especially for us rural folk, I mean, the carbon tax on everything, that's just an added cost passed down to the consumer, right, on everything when we think of, let alone our fuel and our heat for our homes, but even our groceries, everything that's trucked to us has that, right? So it's definitely the cost of living. My office is hearing a lot about people just, really struggling to make ends meet.
What do you say to people who think that, oh, she's never going to read what I send in, or, I can contact her, but nothing's going to happen? What do you say to the people who say those types of things or think that way?
For sure. And I mean, you know what, it's a real thing. People, it doesn't matter what party you're in, what level of government. I'm sure all elected officials hear the same thing, but I tell people all the time, if I don't hear from you, I can't advocate from you. Sometimes it might take a couple phone tags till we get in touch, or sometimes it's a couple weeks, but I try as hard as I can, so does my office, to make sure we reach out to everybody that contacts my office, whether it's a question, a concern, or even just a comment that, or an idea, why don't we do this, or why aren't you doing this, or could you say this? I really value what constituents have to say, and I tell constituents all the time, I have the opportunity of being their voice. Mm-hmm. So it is imperative that I hear from them. so that I can take that to the floor of the House of Commons, but also to the caucus room and have those conversations with my caucus colleagues as well.
Heading into this new year, Rosemary, obviously it's tough to kind of predict how things are going to go, but are there some things that are at the top of your mind for what you want to accomplish heading into 2023?
Well, my most important job, and this actually ties into your previous question, is to be that voice for the constituents of Battleford's Lloydminster. And I tell people sometimes what people want from our constituency isn't popular in Ottawa or even in the caucus room, but it is my job sometimes to be that that thorn in the side, per se, to make sure that, you know, the real life experiences and sometimes even hardships that some people in Battleford's Lloydminster are facing are heard, and that those stories are told. So I'll continue to do that. I'll continue to be that voice. But as for predictions, I mean, who knows? I mean, I'm hearing we could have a spring election,
right.
Which, I mean, I'm not saying that I don't want to have an election, but I don't know if Canadians want to have an election.
Right.
We had the same results just last year in 21. So who knows? What, I mean, they say a whole week can happen in a day,
right.
in politics.
What's it like for you, Rosemary, being in the House of Commons, and you know, obviously you do a lot of work in the constituency, but what's it like being there where the action is? Is it exciting, or do you find it kind of, you know, just run of the mill, or what's your take on that?
It's a new, different day every day, right? And sometimes, and being in a minority is quite interesting, and also
right.
opposition. So really knowing the standing orders and what could be done procedurally in order to make sure that we are able to scrutinize legislation to its fullest. I mean, we've seen a lot of time allocation from this government with the NDP helping,
right.
which has been frustrating. So seeing ways that we are able to make sure that every piece of legislation gets scrutinized to its fullest. I mean, that's part of the opposition's job. So it's never a dull moment, that's for sure.
Well, heading into the new year, everybody's going to take a little bit of a break and a breather, hopefully. So if you had a message for your constituents just to end the year off, what would you like to let them know?
I would definitely want them to know that I am fighting for them in Ottawa, but also to have a wonderful Christmas. Enjoy this season with family and friends. Don't take for granted the ability to be together. I think that's one thing maybe some of us did take for granted over the years. So make sure to enjoy that time, and a happy and healthy new year for 2023.
Well, Rosemary, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to chatting with you again in the new year.
Yes, for sure.
Thank you.
We now take a look at the Lloydminster U18 AAA Steelers Club. It was a year that saw them have a new voice behind the bench and success in a tournament south of the border. Adil Ahmed has more.
Joining me on the program today is Steelers head coach Grant Friesen. Now, Grant, this was the year 2022. As we kind of wind down here on the year, it's been a busy year for yourself, to say the least. Just having to take on a head coaching role of a U18 AAA hockey club for the Steelers here. Just as the season kind of winds down here in the year itself, if you had to kind of reflect on it, just what would some of your thoughts be overall from this year alone?
Well, I think, like you said, first and foremost, it's busy, especially while you're in season. There's a lot of travel, but it's been great. We've had a lot of opportunities to travel to different places, different cities, you know, both in Canada and the U.S. So
obviously, kind of in October of 2021, you kind of took over the head coaching job, and this is kind of now your first full season kind of coaching this group of girls. I think one of the things that you kind of mentioned to me early on this year was just the work ethic and how impressed you have been with these girls. Just now that you've had a chance to kind of coach these girls full on this season here, just what are some takeaways that you've taken from this group, and just some of the positives that you can kind of talk about with this group here?
Yeah, well, I think the first and foremost, like you mentioned, was, you know, the work ethic of our group is incredible. And I think the other thing they've done a very good job of is, you know, when you play at the U18 AAA level, it's very busy. You spend a lot of time together, and they found a way to do a very good job of, you know, you're not going to like everybody every day, but they've found a way to work together positively, even on days that maybe you're a little bit tired of somebody. they found a way to still push each other and make each other better in a positive, constructive way.
Another thing that I kind of wanted to talk about here that happened this year for you guys is the fact that you guys had a chance to just most recently go down to Nashville in a tournament with a number of teams, whether they were in Canada and the United States. Just talk to me obviously about that experience. You guys obviously got the victory there in the tournament, but just the experience a whole of having to travel over to the U.S., see competition from other areas of the U.S. and even in Canada. Just talk to me about that experience as a whole.
Yeah, I think one, it's a great experience when you get the opportunity, especially as a team, to be able to travel to a different country, a new city. Nashville's a very fun place to be. There's a lot of things going on, so it was great to have the opportunity to go explore a new city with our group for sure.
Now, after the season concluded back in March, I believe, for you guys, just what were you looking to implement into the team kind of in the off season here as you kind of went into your first full season coaching this group? Just what were some of the things that you were looking to work on as a coach and try to implement into the team of 20 players or so?
Yeah, well, first and foremost is the communication. As a coach, you can never be good enough at communicating, especially when you're managing a bench of 20 people. So communication was one, and I think two, what I learned from the previous season going into this one, I just wanted to have a very detailed plan of what our season was going to look like, what our structure of our group was going to look like. So yeah, it was just having a very detailed plan.
Now that the year kind of winds down here in 2022, heading into the year of 2023, what are some of the things that you're looking to kind of hoping to accomplish just as a coach and also just with these group of girls?
Yeah, I think first and foremost what we're looking to accomplish as a group is kind of round our game out and start to prepare for playoffs. And then I think goal for us from there is just be successful through playoffs. We still have another tournament coming up in Vancouver, as well as another possible tournament out in Manitoba. So just I think rounding out our game, getting ourselves ready to go for playoffs.
Absolutely. Lastly, I know this is something that everybody asks other people, but for yourself as a coach, any New Year's resolutions that you kind of have set in place for yourself as a coach and just for the team, aside some of the things you just mentioned?
I don't think I have too much personally. I'm trying to push most towards the group. But I think, maybe a resolution for us would just to have more consistency through our in-game play.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Grant, again, best of luck kind of heading into the year of 2023.
Thank you.
Grant Friesen of the Steelers head coach, as he's looking to give his team a more positive outlook kind of heading into the year of 2023. Thanks again for taking the time to talk with me here at the Service Sports Center.
Thank you.
We are back with our financial literacy series with Synergy Credit Union, and I'm joined today by Amberly and Sydney this time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about credit card balances. And credit is a contentious issue no matter what. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the difference between a debit and a credit card.
Absolutely. They're very different. They both do similar things, but there are some differences. So a debit card is linked directly to your checking account. It basically is like a personal check, which I know we don't use much anymore, or cash. So basically, when you make a purchase or a transaction, that money comes out of your account right away. So you do need a checking account for it to be tied to, for the money to come from. And often with a checking account, depending on what FI you're at and the account plan you're in, there would be a monthly fee or service charge for having that, as well as charges if you become overdrawn, so taking money out that you don't actually have in your account. It doesn't affect your credit score, which is nice because it's linked right to your account. And it's a super convenient way to make daily purchases when you go to the grocery store or whatever it may be. It's a great way to have access to funds.
Okay.
And a credit card is linked to a line of credit. So think of it as a convenient way to borrow money. Transactions are covered by the credit card issuer or your financial institution, but you do have to pay them back at a later date. So it can be easy to overspend, which can lead to carrying a balance which you'll be charged interest on. When used responsibly, a credit card can help you build your credit score. It does require an application and approval process to get a credit card. And also a caution, high transaction fees can be applied when using an ATM or going over your limit.
Okay, so what are the benefits of paying your card off in full every month?
So there's actually quite a few different benefits associated with that. So the first one would be building your credit. So creating those habits and paying it off in full is a great way to get started and boost that credit score. You also skip the interest because if you're, like she mentioned, carrying a balance, you do get charged for that. So
Right.
also a great way to kind of cut down on those costs. And staying out of debt is another great way since credit cards are a form of a loan. So, you know, by paying it off, you're staying on top of that. You also can avoid late fees or penalties by, you know, making sure those payments are done on the correct date. And then too, lots of credit cards offer rewards. So either cashback,
Right.
travel, discounts at certain places such as that. So by keeping on top of those payments, you get to reap all of those rewards, which is kind of nice.
Kind of a benefit, I guess.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about being organized.
Well, to be organized with your credit card, you can do a couple of different things. You can set up the minimum payment on auto pay to avoid racking up late fees so you don't forget to make your payment. It's always going to come out automatically. You need to pay at least the minimum payment on your credit card before the due date, but it is always best if you can pay your credit card off completely in full. This will help you avoid those interest charges. And like Sydney said, reading your statement is very, very important. You could also get an app and then you can review your transactions on the daily, but lots of people don't have time for that too. But you can also set up alerts on your credit card. So anytime charge or interest fee or payment is due, you get an alert and it helps you stay organized.
Now, when the statement shows up, what type of information is on there?
So the statement is jam-packed with lots of very important information, and I feel like sometimes people maybe don't take the time to review it since it rarely comes in the mail anymore. Usually it's e-statement or online.
Right.
So when reviewing your statement, there's quite a few areas to look at. So the first would be the statement date, so when it was issued, as well as the billing cycle. So basically when those transactions took place. For credit cards, typically we see 20 to 45-day periods, depending on the card. So it's not on a month-to-month basis like your bank statement would be. And then there's also the grace period too. So that would be the time that the statement ended to when your payment is due.
Okay.
So important to be mindful of that because often there's the minimum payment that needs to be made to avoid further penalties,
Right.
and then the full amount that is due for it to be paid off in full. Also, it outlines all of your transactions. So that's really important, especially these days because we're seeing really high rates of fraud
Right.
and fraudulent transactions that take place. So good to keep on top of that kind of throughout the month too by using your apps or checking in just to make sure all the transactions that are recorded are actually ones that you have made. If you find something that is fraudulent and not supposed to be on there, definitely get in contact with the credit card provider as soon as you can to get that card canceled to prevent further losses or transactions taking place. So yeah, that's a really good way to stay on top of it and make sure everything that's going through your account is accurate. Also to make sure you're not going over your limit to avoid further penalties. So yeah, lots of good information. If you have questions or are unsure of what the information means or how to read it, always recommend meeting with your financial advisor, whether it's Synergy or another FI that you deal with, to go through that just to make sure you understand and also understand the benefits of your card. If
Right.
there's certain things that you should be taking more advantage of or avoiding or things like that. So definitely lots of good information that should be reviewed on a regular basis.
Yeah, that is a lot of info that's packed in there. And I think, like you said, a lot of people will just tend to quick look at it and see the balance and then that's it. But
Yeah, exactly.
all kinds of different things you should be on the lookout for. So if someone has maxed out their credit card and you've got difficulties even just like making the minimum payment, what kind of advice would you give them?
Well, first off, don't be embarrassed. It happens to a lot of people, and don't avoid it. That will not make it go away. So find the courage to meet with your advisor, but we can also talk about some options to think about here too. Something we would talk to you about would be making a strategy. So we go at it with a snowball strategy or an avalanche strategy, just to kind of give you a mental picture. So your snowball strategy is starting smaller and hopefully building up. So we want to pick out the debt that has the least amount or the highest interest. Pay that first. If that doesn't work and you have a lot of money and you're feeling really ambitious, you want to start attacking the biggest balances and paying them off first and then going from there. That's your avalanche strategy. So that's going to get rid of it quicker. But both strategies work, and definitely get in touch with your advisor and we can work through it. Sometimes it takes the emotion out of it for people, and then we can look at the facts and make a clear plan.
Well, excellent information on all of this. And if anybody is looking for help with their credit or with anything else, what's the best way to reach you at any of the branches?
So I would go to our website, so synergycu.ca. From there, we have lots of helpful tips and tricks, lots of blog articles and learning resources, but also you have the ability to book appointments with one of our advisors, either on the phone, in person, via Teams, and whatever branch is closest to you. And we'd always look forward to the opportunity to chat with members and non-members about these topics. And yeah, that would probably be the best way to reach us.
Okay, well, thank you so much, ladies, for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.